like we always do with Grid. So Grid meets typically the second Wednesday of each month at 5:30 in our Fort Mill, South Carolina office. And oftentimes when we have special guests, we go into Charlotte, Indian Trail. We've gone to Huntersville. We've gone to Concord before. So depending on the topic and the expertise, we travel around the Charlotte metro area. And Grid is full of almost 500 members. Thrilled that we are there after just 2 years since launching our Grid chapter. And Grid is a hyper local investor education networking group. And it is something that I felt was missing. The education part of it is often missing, and we are never actually asking for business. We are always offering you guys to have great takeaways. And so one of our passions and missions about this group is to be able to provide you guys with connections and being a catalyst to future opportunities, no matter what industry you're in. And often it's related to investing in real estate. So again, because we're a networking group, I'm going to quickly ask everybody to introduce themselves, share what part of the industry, if they're in the industry, or what they want to get out of today. Because again, this group is for you guys. And if you hear somebody that is doing something that you want to be doing, or if you, are a specialist in a certain part of the industry, then someone can private message you. That's really why we do this group. So real quick, I'm going to share with, so Sharon, you're at the top of my screen. Sharon Dillard, if you wouldn't mind coming off mute and just saying real fast who you are, why you're here, and if you're in the industry, what you do.
All right. Well, Sharon Roberts. My husband and I have been talking for quite a while now about getting an investment property. So, of course, we love and respect and admire you. So we are here to see what you have to say about it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So Caroline H, you are in the second part. So if you wouldn't mind coming off screen or off of mute.
Yes, I have some people that I know that are in real estate, and I'm interested in getting a property together myself. So I'm
Awesome.
just a new.
So glad you're here.
Thanks.
Angeline, you're next.
There we go. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Angeline. I work in the insurance business. I own 2 Airbnbs currently. One is at the beach and one is in the mountains of North Carolina. And I'm interested in learning how to purchase, like leveraging what I currently have to purchase additional as part of my retirement plan. So
Love
nice
it.
to meet with you.
Glad you're here. Ernesto, you're next.
Sorry, I was on a different screen. Hey guys, I'm Ernesto. I'm a real estate agent in North Carolina. I have a few rental properties that I own in the state of South Carolina, in the city of Fort Mill. I've known Rebecca for a while. She's awesome. So I always like joining her meetings because I always learn something from her.
Glad you're here.
Yeah.
Emily, next. Hey, I'm Emily Richardson. I have well, I'm blessed because I get to work with Rebecca Collins on the team with Cullen and Company. So I'm a real estate agent, so I learned the real estate selling and buying and listing of it. But now I'm kind of leaning more towards learning how to do investments.
Awesome. So Kelly Alexander, you're also next. So if if you're just hopping on, I'm going around the room asking everybody to introduce themselves, what they would like to get out of the conversation, and if they're in the industry, what their role is.
Right. Good evening, everyone. This is actually completely informational for me. I'm newer to real estate, having been in healthcare for 20 plus years, but I'm looking to get into investments really for my own retirement.
Awesome. Well, you're in the right room, and Ashley's
Yeah.
going to bring incredible value to this conversation here soon. So,
Wonderful.
next is Erica McCoy. If you want to hop off mute, introduce yourself. And if you're not able to, then I'm going to just pop to the next person. Melissa Sandoval. All right. If you're not in a position to chat, that's okay. So Rachel Hall, you're next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Hall. I am a Keller Williams agent. I also have 2 staging businesses, Hot Decor and More, as well as a VRBO staging business called Vacay Decor and More. And I also work with my husband who flips houses in South Carolina and North Carolina. And I'm really interested in learning about vacation rentals and Airbnbs. Thank you.
Cool. Glad you're here. So I'm going to totally mess up your name, and I truly apologize. So please correct me. I think it's Syed.
Yeah, before you start, I've been trying to change my name here, so
Okay.
it's going to be easy for you guys. But I'm very new with Google Meet, so I've been always doing Zoom. So I had no idea how I can just alter my name so it would be easy for you guys to pronounce it. Yes, my name is Moji. I'm new to real estate. I am I had a background in research, in cancer research for a long time. So right now I'm trying to just switch to something easier for my old age. So yeah, I am interested in starting co-hosting for Airbnb.
Awesome.
And I've been trying to meet up with so many people in past few months, and I've done my homework by taking some courses, watching a lot of videos on YouTube's and all that. But I believe the best way for me to learn and get more experience is through working with somebody who is already in the field. And I would really, the reason I am trying to connect in different groups is to just hook up with somebody can help me. I can help them. It's not like employment or anything, just something to help me along their work and how they handle it, because there are so many pitfalls I know when you're handling a host and Airbnb and all that. So I need to get a hands-on training with somebody. I appreciate it. I could get that opportunity.
Yeah. Well, glad you're here, and hopefully you'll have some great takeaways, and Ashley, I'm sure, is going to talk about that. So, great. So Angela, you're up. Yep.
You got it. We're arguing over the computer. Sorry. Yeah. So we're Brandon and Angela Candy. She's a licensed realtor. I'm a local pastor and retired Army chaplain. And we're looking at doing our first investment property. We want to get a spot in the mountains, probably rent it out, Airbnb or whatever, with possibility of, one day retiring there or selling it and using it as equity for something further.
Awesome.
We are new. We don't know what we're doing.
Well, great. This is the right conversation. I'm glad you're here. So Arun, if you just hopped on, we're going around the room why you're here. If you're in the real estate world, what your role is. If you're able to hop off mute. If not, no problems.
Yeah. Hi, Rebecca. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I am a beginner investor. I can say that. So I wanted to, do a small investment and generate uh, a little profit, I must say, with a short-term rental, something kind of an Airbnb, like a small container home or a tiny home or a glamping site where the investment is very short. That's what I was thinking, like a small investment, but not going into losses, that such kind of thing. And I wanted to understand how people are doing it, and if there's a structure or a strategy where I can do it. Yeah, I wanted to learn. That's the primary reason I joined this call.
Well, great. Well, this is the right room. So, Ashley Calla, you're up. If you're able to unmute.
There we go. It was not letting me. Hi, I'm Ashley Calla. I am a realtor. I have been in the business since 2018, and I am also blessed, just like Emily, to be on Rebecca's team. So I am very grateful to be able to
Did we lose her? No.
I think so.
Okay. So Ashley, thanks for sharing. Cheryl Brannon.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Rebecca.
Hi.
So I have recently started paying attention to Rebecca's meetings and all of her posts. I usually see all her stuff on Facebook, so I've been very eager to get to this point where I feel like I can participate and learn more from you. I was very lucky to sit in front of you, behind you in a cube back at the Foundation for the Carolinas. But I am a realtor in Charleston, South Carolina. I work with Carolina One, which is the largest real estate company in Charleston. And I'm lucky. I have 3 rentals already, one which is one that I moved out of in Charlotte to move to Charleston. And I'm just wanting to figure out how I can continue on and possibly buy an Airbnb and how to do that smartly and wisely. So thanks so much for everything you're doing, Rebecca.
Awesome. You're welcome. That was like 10 years ago. So full circle. All right. So Steve.
Yeah, hey everyone. My name is Steve, and I am just here for the information purposes, starting to look at some investment properties up in the mountains, as well as some other real estate investment opportunities. So I'm looking forward to hearing what everyone's got to say.
Awesome. Tim, you're up. Maybe. I'm going to go with Yolanda.
Okay, I think I'm off mute. So I'm new to North Carolina. I did have my real estate license in another state. I didn't hang my license here yet. I do live on the coast. I definitely want to do an Airbnb, but I'm open to anywhere in the state. I have everything already purchased for the Airbnb without the Airbnb. So that tells you I want to do it. I'm kind of glad that I'm ready, but I did put the cart before the horse a little bit, but I'm just so excited that I started buying stuff. So
well, cool.
Hopefully we'll land something to get that stuff out of my house.
Awesome. And last but not least, Yvonne. Maybe. Okay. So we're going to move on. So Ashley Class, you are in, like, you guys, she is the person who I think of when I think of Charlotte midterms, getting investors together, like total bad ass. Sorry. When it comes to these decisions. And so we are thrilled that she's here. And she has a very special presentation for everybody. And so Ashley, I'll let you take it away and share a little bit who you are and why you're here.
Thank you so much. Let's see if I can change this over. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ashley Klass. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for that kind intro. I have been investing in the Charlotte area and its outskirts for the past almost 13 years now. I'm going to give a little bit of insight on how the art of flexibility is so important in real estate investing because the market is very flexible. So let's switch over. Just want to make sure you guys can see it. I'm just going to go right from Canva instead of.
Yeah, I was having the same issue.
Google's so funny. Okay. All right. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, there we are.
All right. Perfect. So we're going to talk about real estate investing. We're going to talk about ideal places to look. Let me just go right there. Then you don't have to deal with all my tabs. And we're going to talk about how to maximize your profit because that's really what we're looking for at the end of the day. So we've already been through with the introductions and it sounds like there is an eclectic bunch of really who invests in real estate, and it's anybody can invest in real estate. It's really just honestly taking that leap. So when we're talking about flexibility, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. And that is I've been a real estate investor, like I said, the past 12 years. I moved to Charlotte with only what was in my car. I was actually working as a fashion designer in New York City, and I was making a high salary of $42,000 in New York City. While that was, decades ago, at the same time, you could barely afford rent. And so I knew I had to be somewhere else. I'm from upstate New York originally, so I needed some land. I needed to feel at home a little bit. I fell in love with Charlotte. I drove up and down the coast with my dog, fell in love with Charlotte, and on a whim only in your 20s, I decided, you know what? I'm going to move 10 hours from my family and I'm just going to put roots here randomly. I knew nobody and literally only moved what was in my car. I knew I wanted to buy a home. I saw all the statistics. I'm a big numbers person about how fast Charlotte was growing. So I actually slept on an air mattress for the first 4 months so that I could actually save money and didn't have anything in my apartment. I said, you know what? I'm going to save the money on a bed and we're going to put that more towards a down payment for a house. So the first property that I actually bought, I rented out rooms in what's called, it's called rental hacking. And so essentially I lived in it while rehabbing it in the Plaza Shamrock area, which was still very up and coming at the time, and rented out the rooms to individual people instead of renting out the property myself. They were able to pay my mortgage and then some, and I was able to cover the rehab costs. So then after 2 years, which I used to call my new every two plan, just like, Verizon Wireless specializes in, I focused on the BRRRR strategy, which was refinancing all the work that I did on that house in order to take equity out of that house and purchase my first sole rental property. From then, it's been a process of taking out the equity every time I rehabbed it. And if anybody does not know what the BRRRR method is, it's buy, rehab, refinance, rinse, and repeat, just in case you're looking. So highly recommend for those that haven't been a part of the real estate world. The BRRRR method is really interesting. It gives a lot of detail. So as I started to acquire rental properties, I also came into the situation of in 2017, I actually shifted to long-term. I had a couple rough evictions, just damages to the property that I was so disappointed in. So I switched to short-term rental because I figured I could control it a little bit. And what we've learned in real estate, you can't control anything. Because then in 2020, on March 14th, it's one day I will tell over and over and over, March 14th, 2020, I was 3 months pregnant and I lost $80,000 of bookings in one day. And that was due to COVID because everything shut down and everybody's freaking out and nobody was knowing what to do. $80,000 of bookings in one day, that was mortgage payments. And that was very much a lot of stress at 12 weeks pregnant. So shifted gear, started to look at really who was coming into, yeah, Rebecca gets it. Yeah, it was a really rough week. And so I shifted over to the idea of travel nurses because I started to see on Facebook Marketplace an influx of people saying they needed Airbnbs, but they couldn't afford Airbnb pricing. By the end of 2022, in that 2-year period, I started to design short-term rentals. I started to really look at my short-term rentals, look at the space. And I actually ended up co-hosting, co-managing, working with a real estate agent. I'm not a licensed agent. I am a designer and I'm an investor hand in hand. I partner with really smart real estate investors and real estate agents. And that's what I always will recommend, that if you take away anything, partner with a really strong agent that knows and is an investor as well, because they're going to help you propel it to the next level with what your goals are, because they understand it from a personal perspective. And so we got to, at the end of 2022, over 100 properties that we were co-hosting, co-managing. My business was doing full property management for the short-term rental and mid-term rental space. And we'll go into what each is, because I know it can get a little bit confusing. And then February 2024, I had our third baby, and I decided to take a step back because of some interesting interactions, because I'm very hands-on with my properties. And you can actually follow my TikTok, where I talk about all the bad guest stories, if you will, and decided to switch to consulting, designing, and reducing my property management. And so now I consult internationally. I was just in London in August to consult and work with a bunch of different investors. And then I still actively invest in the Charlotte real estate market. So as it's overall from my story, the idea is that, listen, you can go literally from sleeping in your car and moving to sleeping on an air mattress to purchasing rental properties. And it really does change your life, because you're investing in yourself in a different way. Rebecca, should I leave questions for each slide, or would you rather I wait till the end for questions?
Let's wait until the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. So why short-term rentals, midterm rentals? Well, you're going to get a higher rent. You're going to get less tenant liability. That's really why I switched at the beginning in 2017. You're going to get increased market equity. The house has to stay maintained. You have less damages. So you're handling the landscaping. You're going through your walkthroughs. You're checking out all the different damages. Each guest is paying for any damages that they accrue. So your maintenance is going to be the biggest cost. And then the fourth one is that you get increased relationships. So throughout, when we were at our peak in 2022 of over the 100 properties, I was working with different realtors all the time, of all the people that were moving into the area and then couldn't find properties. So when you're in these networking groups, this is a great opportunity, especially with Rebecca, that she manages this, is just, she may know that you have an Airbnb and she has a client that's moving to the area and is like, hey, do you have any availability? And that was about 60% of my bookings last year were families moving to the area that haven't found a place yet, but they heard from word of mouth, they heard from other realtors that they should talk to me, they should talk about my properties. And I really was able to move off platform and save some of the additional costs you may acquire with websites. And so talking about the different websites, you have Airbnb and VRBO, which are the two top, but then we also have Furnished Finder, which is really my bread and butter when it comes to midterm rentals. That is specifically for that 21 plus day market for rentals. And then booking.com has tried to expand to be a little bit more an Airbnb competitor. The biggest things I would take away from the differences between Airbnb and VRBO, it really comes down to vacation rentals for me. I think of VRBO when you're thinking of people have talked about the mountains or the beach. It's really more of that vacation rental market, where Airbnbs are not just that. Somebody has a quick place to stay because their water heater exploded. You would less likely stay at a VRBO because they usually have a restriction or a cap on the day availability. So you'd be looking at like a 5-day minimum, where Airbnb, if you had emergency, you could book that night. So I created this little chart just to help, because I know that there's a lot of new investors. So when we're looking at short-term, mid-term, and long-term, these are differences. Short-term is under 21 days. Mid-term is that 21 days to really, I would say about 9 months comfortably. And then long-term rental is really 9 months to 1 year plus. Biggest thing is that short-term and mid-term rentals are fully furnished properties, where long-term is not. But the biggest thing is because you're investing all these different items of your furnishings, your utilities, your landscaping, all the different items for maintenance, you're going to get 2 to 3 times fair market value. And then same with midterm rentals as well. When we look at expenses, as I talked about all the different items to expense, midterm rentals, you will get less rent, but you're going to be restocking and paying for less cleanings. You're also going to be having less really wear and tear of the potentials of like parties coming in. But there's ways we can talk about to alleviate some of those concerns. And then the biggest thing is that you also have to think about when you think about your branding and what you want to do from a rental perspective for investments is really that communication piece. I will tell you, there has not been one day I've fully taken off vacation in that 7+ years. And that's because it is highly hands-on. It's 24/7 responses. I have a team now, but at the same time, I'm a little bit OCD. So I have not taken a vacation, but it is worth it because you're also not working an 8 to 5 every day. Now, midterm rentals is usually less of a communication piece because really it's just maintenance. They need a filter or they need something fixed. And then long-term rentals, it's really for those repairs like a roof issue or, HVAC. HVAC is usually our toughest complaint from across all the boards. All right. And so when we're looking at different amenities and different renters, each bucket that we talked about, short-term rentals, midterm rentals, and long-term rentals, they are completely different when it comes to what they need from amenities and what they need from what kind of rentals are renting them. So for midterm rentals, as I talked about 2020, we had traveling medical professionals, business travelers, people coming, 3-4 months at a time to scope out a project. We had new homeowners, those waiting on their new construction home or those trying to purchase a home. We had those relocating to the area, digital nomads, the ability for people to work wherever, whenever. A lot of students came in and still come in for internships. We just ended our internship season because it's usually peaks in the summer. And then now we're gearing up to introduce our snowbirds are coming into town. And that is those older members that are coming in, getting away from the cold, and they're usually coming to help family out. Those like me that moved from the cold to this area. And then just to give a resources, I actually wrote a book called Pricing and Furnishing Your Midterm Rental. If you'd like to check it out, it's like $3 on Amazon, but it has all the breakdown fully in detail of the different types to cater to and how you change your listing to accommodate those different types of renters. And then when we talk about amenities, my biggest thing is I'm going to tell you over and over and over, midterm rentals, you design for comfort, where short-term rentals, you're going to do full design for the location and the social aspect. A midterm rental is going to be less Instagrammable, if you will, and you can make it more Instagrammable, don't get me wrong, but you're going to focus and spend your money, or you're going to want to, more on a comfier sofa or a comfier bed because they're going to stay 21+ days. Where a short-term rental, they don't care about how comfortable it is, but if you have a neon light anywhere, they want a picture right in front of it. So just kind of thinking about different accents, different ways you're going to spend your money. It's all going to come down to what your brand is and what you want your investment strategy to be. I work with a client right now, only focuses on 4 bedrooms. That is her thing. That is her bread and butter. She only wants 4-bedroom homes. She only wants them in a certain area. She only wants 4-bedroom homes. That's her strategy. Some people only want tiny homes. Somebody in here talked about tiny homes. They only want a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and they want to only focus on making it like a couple's retreat for a short-term rental. That's their strategy. So I highly recommend before you buy your home or before you think about investing into different aspects, really what you want it to be. And so then when we talk about short-term renters and the rental market, that's going to be targeted towards couples, families. It's a shorter term rentals. So they're coming in for bachelorette parties, business professionals coming for a 5-day stay because they have a conference. Event-based travel, we have, we have Panther Stadium, we have events, concerts, different things like that. Then you have students. Now, where before they were staying for internships from a midterm rental perspective, it's usually those visiting colleges or families visiting those students because we have UNC Charlotte here or Queens. So I know this is a lot of information, and Rebecca told me that this will be sent out tomorrow. I actually sent the deck over. So this is just how to determine your pricing. So I have a free option here, Rabu's Airbnb calculator. Rabu used to be a company, it's actually founded in Charlotte. They were a national company that also did short-term rental property management. They changed gears and they moved towards showing different short-term rental opportunity properties in nationwide. And so it's almost like a Zillow for short-term rentals, but then it's also, they have this free calculator. I think it's a little exaggerated. So I always say, use Rabu's, but subtract 20%. So it's your base. That's your fast and easy. If you want to look and see, oh my gosh, this house is going to go off the market in like hours, I want to check it out. This is the free link that I would recommend, and then subtract 20%. If you are those that have 2 or 3 properties, then I would start recommending looking at AirDNA or Price Labs because it is a paid opportunity, but they are much more accurate and they pull all the different information from VRBO and from Airbnb to really determine and establish a more accurate price. And then a fast and easy formula. And again, this is all subject to change. But for me, I look at the fair market value of rent plus expenses, and I multiply it by 2. And that's usually that's my base. So for instance, $2,200 for a month, $2,200 a month they're going to get for a long-term rental, and estimate for all your utilities, your landscaping, your cable, maintenance in general, water bills, let's say it's $275. I multiply it by 1.8. That gets you an average. Now I always say, do your research because that is an average on what the generalized is, but then it's going to change based on the amenities you offer, the condition of the home. I have homes that they have not been updated since early 1990s, and they fly off the market and they are booked until February because I price it accordingly. I know that they're going to get a lesser rent if I do long-term, but I also know that they're comfortable midterm and they're in a great location. So they fly off of the shelf. So I recommend using that as kind of your average. So there's going to be prices that are more and there's going to be rent that's less, but it's a good base. Now, if we're looking at those that are looking to purchase an Airbnb potentially or a midterm rental, short-term rental, you're going to consider each of them very differently because location is everything for a short-term rental. You want it to be short commutes to event spaces when we talk about concerts and football stadiums and all of that. You have to determine your business model to understand what aspect of the house you're looking at because you will stage and design based on who you want to stay at your property. What I mean by that is if you have a 2-bedroom home, there's not going to be a lot of people staying there. So you're going to design it for 4 people, 2 bedrooms, you'd assume 2 people per bed. You would design it towards that. That is something you want to incorporate into your short-term rental strategy. For a short-term rental, my first recommendation is always no HOAs. If you have a property that's in an HOA, my next recommendation is to understand your HOA structure and bylaws before you spend all this money making this a short-term rental. I actually had a client that unfortunately did not do that. They spent $15,000 in furniture and it was shut down within 2 weeks. So I always say, please check your HOA bylaws. And then the next thing when it comes to location, when you look at, are you able to manage or can you hire a property manager? That would be another additional expense you would have to incorporate and look at feasibility for each. And when I say, can you manage? Are you available 24/7 to answer any calls for short-term rentals? You want to make sure that you understand, the different parts of customer service because short-term rentals are higher end customer service. Where midterm rental, as we talk about maintenance, you can get an email or a call, and unless the house is on fire, you have a little bit of wiggle room. So when you look at short-term rentals, you're designing specifically for that space. You're making it that Instagrammable moment in that space. Midterm rentals, you're designing for comfort. So you're looking at homes, preferably. I usually say stay away. I don't love apartments for midterm rentals because you cannot control a lot of the factors, such as who are the other tenants that are on each of the walls, each other side of the wall of you. You can't control if they're smoking marijuana and then you have a guest complaint. That's happened for me. You can't control how loud they're going to be or who's above and is going to control that. So I would stick to homes or townhomes so that you have control over your headspace. And then also ideally you want a fenced in yard because most people, and if not a fenced in yard, a walkable area, because most midterm rental people are going to want to be in a home. They're going to stay there for a longer time and they're going to want to usually bring their pet. And so by having a fenced in yard or an amenity of a park nearby or a walking area, that's going to be a very attractive piece for them because they can bring their furry friend. And then usually that's attuned to neighborhoods or suburbs. My best producing midterm rentals are all in suburbia. Matthews is a great area example. Cornelius, Mooresville, Huntersville, all places that people are purchasing homes and they're waiting on new construction. So that's the another tip I would give to you is that if you're looking to buy, look where the new builds are going because you're going to have people that are waiting for those new builds to be built. So you will have clients that want to stay there usually. And then always make sure the HOA and bylaws are accepted. I would say 90% of the time from a midterm rental perspective, it's usually a 30-day minimum. And so midterm rentals really fall into that. Instead of 21 days minimum, you just make your minimum 30 days and you'll still be in an HOA with the accepted time frame. But always just double check your bylaws. And that's another great way to partner with your agent to really understand because they can help you find those, get those answers, and make sure it's the right property for you. I gave a lot of information, but I've done some of these calls before, and I know everybody has a lot of different questions based on that information. So I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions and answers. And then I also have a couple ebooks that I've written just to talk about the preliminary information you need for a midterm. So I kind of want to open it up because I know there's going to be questions.
So real quick, I'm going to ask the first question and then we're going to take hand raisers. What is your typical return on investment that you're looking for each property? Do you have a formula for that?
Yeah. So my ROI when it comes to, or it depends again, short-term or midterm or long-term, obviously, but I always look for a 30% return monthly minimum. Because I say 30% now is because we're getting so much equity coming in from how fast Charlotte and outskirts are growing that even if I'm making 30%, I mean, that's still 30%, but at the same time, the equity is outweighing that. And I also feel that Charlotte itself becoming more and more expensive, the margins are getting a bit tighter. You don't have as much room. And when you have a short-term rental or your strategy is short-term rental, you want to be near the amenities. So I stick to 30.
Great. Steve has the first question.
Yeah. Hey, Ashley.
Hey.
You were talking about gave the example of the monthly rent of 2,800 or 2,700 plus the multiplier of 1.8 for expenses, maybe two points you mentioned as well, 20 whatever it was. But where does if you want to be, you talked about being hands-on. What about hands-off and having a property manager, a professional property manager, manage the properties for you, which I've been exploring. But it's a big piece of the pie they want. Anywhere from, I've seen 22 to almost 35% fee for them to manage the property, which just blows up my spreadsheets real quickly.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I am not pricing the right amount because I charge my clients 18%, but but I will say that when you look at the formulas of fair market value plus expenses, that's where I would add in that property management. Now, I will tell you, it is expensive because it is hands-on. I get short-term rental clients day in and day out being like, hey, Ashley, where's a can opener? Instead of just opening a drawer. So you're paying for what you get. So I would say put in your expenses, add that property management, and then look where you can tweak essentially to either compensate for that, such as increasing the nightly rate. One of the things I look at from a strategy is if it is too expensive from a midterm or a long-term rental perspective, because long-term rental is usually about 10%, and then midterm's about 18, I would say 15 to 18%. And then you look at the short term and that's increasing, especially when you get to the vacation rental market where that gets even crazier. And I mean vacation rentals such as like the beach or the mountains. But I always say the longer somebody stays, the more I discount. So if you need to get more where it needs to be a higher nightly rate, then maybe short-term rentals is going to be more of your strategy. And I would make sure that you include that in your expenses to see what you can tailor or tweak along that, if that makes sense. Oh, you're on mute, Steve.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Awesome. So Ernesto, you were next.
Yes, Ashley, thank you very much for putting this together for us. I do have a couple of questions. In terms of you finding these properties, do you find key-ready properties? Do you find properties that need love and kind of work them out? When you mentioned about, the design, the staging you want to do for the consumers that you want to attract, how do you get these units?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. So it really determines, first thing I always say, and it's going to sound annoying, is go back to your brand strategy of, do you want midterms? Do you want short terms? Because for me, I will pay more to be in a better location if the ROI is going to give me a consistent booking. So I don't just look at like a return on investment when it comes to how much money I'm going to bring in monthly. I also look at how long it's going to be booked. And so Price Labs and AirDNA really helps out with the averaging and really tweaking and tailoring down to the neighborhood of what you think you can get. And that's where I start to bucket out where I'm seeing the need. So on, let's say, AirDNA, there's an actual area that color codes where they're starting to see a request for certain areas versus what that value is. So if it overlaps with what my strategy is, meaning there is a 30% increase of people acquiring about a certain area and the average pricing is this. Well, if the current houses on the market are only getting me less than that, I'll absolutely look at what I can do and implement in a house, because that's also added value, whatever you put into it. I'm not saying buy a gut, but if there's something that doesn't have kitchen cabinets need to be updated, countertops, those are something lower end on the scale. They still cost money, but at the same time, you get a faster ROI on new cabinets. And so I would tailor to something that's cosmetic rather than something that's going to be like a full gut, like rewire, plumbing, roof, all those different things that you need. So it
Okay.
really is, I recommend if you're looking at trying to implement, you have your one strategy and you have your price point that you can afford. Try AirDNA, try Price Labs to overlap and see where those big heat maps are.
Okay.
That's usually what gives me like a determined strategy, because it will say also, you can also search by occupancy level. So I'll also look at where's my rates of over 60% occupancy, and that will start to show an even more need.
Okay. And the reason to my question is because if it's been the case for you at any point where you have a unit where you have to do like you said, I need to do some plumbing work because it was, kind of a light rehab, but you still have to do things like that. Like if when you go, because you mentioned the HOA, but how about the city to get those permits to transform that house into a short term? Is that a tough process to go through? It takes time?
Are you saying permits for a short-term rental or permits for repairs?
Both, actually. Yes.
Okay, so permits, always get a licensed professional. They'll pull the
Mhm.
permits, and when you have your licensed professional and everything, they'll pull a quality licensed professional. And from what I've done with my rehabs and everything, they'll not only pull the permits, but they will keep track, because they want to get paid every step of the way. So that usually prompts like an increase. I never pull permits if somebody else is doing the work. I have that liability on them. And so I find that it hustles the permits a little bit faster because I pay in chunks. And so I've noticed that they want to get paid each time the inspection goes through and passes. Now, city permits, as far as Charlotte, and that's a great point because there's a lot of different cities that are starting to have regulations and rules around Airbnb and midterm rentals. If your strategy is midterm rentals, there is not one city yet in the United States, I'm knocking on wood right now, that has restrictions on midterm rentals because they're over 30 days. The biggest concern tenants or people in neighborhoods have with short-term rentals is the influx of strangers coming in and out under 21 days. And so Charlotte as a whole, Mecklenburg County, does not have these restrictions at all. You do not have to have permitting. They've been working on it and trying for several years, but they keep asking for everything rather than getting like a small piece that could really be profitable for the city. What I mean by that is they started to do all these rules last year and create this whole document. I was part of those sessions where it was a 70-page document and they wrote all the statistics on, they wanted short-term rentals to be like 300 feet away from each other because they wanted to rule out apartments. Just say apartments can't have them. Like they just went a little crazy. And so by trying to get everything, they got nothing. So Charlotte, you're still okay. Matthews, there's concern because Matthews has been picking up a lot with short-term rentals. Again, just keep track of the city and whatever area you develop in or want to invest in, just stay on top of the city requirements.
Okay.
Usually they'll walk you through it. And if you're amicable, they're 99% of the time, they're more than happy to walk you through it and like help you out because they know that you care about your property. That's really all they want at the end of the day.
Gotcha. Okay. Great. Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah.
Next up is Angeline.
Hi. So I have two questions. One might be for Rebecca. I'm not sure, but it's about how to leverage your equity in your existing property to purchase another property. And then the second question is, I have a short-term rental, but I want to transition it to a midterm rental.
Mm-hmm.
So what advice can you give me on how to go about that and in the smoothest way possible?
Sure. I will tell you right now, Angeline, that I have hybrid properties that are both short-term and midterm because one of the biggest considerations with a midterm rental is that you're not going to have bookings back to back to back because people that are staying for those months on end usually doesn't always align. Like they're moving because of a closing date, and the more people stay, the less you'll find somebody that wants to stay those exact days for the same amount of time elsewhere. So I try to do like a hybrid where I will book short-term rentals in between my midterm rental clients just to keep it more occupied, just to, keep it, as an investor, you want to make the max profit. I think you're 99% of the way there. I would look at my best recommendation to you when you're converting a short-term rental is stay a night in the property. Like literally sit in there, stay in there, sleep on those beds, sit on the couch, use the utensils if you can, because you want to see really what that guest is experiencing. And I'll recommend that for like short-term rentals and midterm rentals. But when you look at a midterm rental, when we talk about designing for comfort, there might be things that you're sleeping there and you're like, this pillow sucks. Somebody's going to not be aggravated about it if they stay for 3 days, but somebody 10 days plus is going to be like, Angeline, give me some new pillows. This sucks. You right? So stay a day and you can write it off as a business expense. Try to research and test it out. That's going to be the best because you want comfort. You're going to want a little bit more kitchen utensils, a little bit more cookware. Those are some of the things I would recommend. And then as far as, I'll give my perspective and then I'll pass it over to Rebecca. The BRRRR strategy has always been great for me. So if you have equity in a house and you can refinance it to take it out to purchase another property, that's going to be the best strategy that you can do in my book. Refinance rates are not the greatest, but they are coming down. And Rebecca?
Yeah, that is actually the only way that I have figured out right now to take out actual equity from investment properties. That is the only way that we have figured out how to do that. And yes, to Ashley's point, like interest rates stink right now, but they're not, they're in the 5s to 6s, not the 7 and 8s anymore.
Yeah.
And if you have significant equity that you can deploy in another way, then it actually is earning you more equity and more, your rate of return is actually higher if you're putting it into another property. So I don't really look at interest rates at that point. I look at cap rates,
Right.
The only other suggestion, and there's no lenders on this call today, which is silly because typically we have lenders in these conversations. The only other option is to get a commercial loan and package your portfolio. So then you're creating the like a 5 group of equity, and you can take cash out of all of them and then again deploy in another opportunity that will return you at a higher rate.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so next is Rachel Hall.
Hi, Ashley. This is really great information.
Thank you.
My question is about being pet friendly versus not. What do you recommend to your clients? And and also what about limiting if you don't say no pets? What are you finding if they limit the size of the pets or the type? Tell me all about that. What's your experience?
Sure. So from a midterm rental perspective, you absolutely have to have, I highly recommend that you allow pets. And that if you do go the midterm rental route, one of the biggest things I'm going to say is remove all your carpet. You're going to want rugs and you're going to want hardwoods because that's going to be less damage. Now, I will say when it comes to pet limits, I do not allow cats. I do like cats, but unfortunately, there's a lot of cat owners that do not take care of their cats. And so I've had that my personal experiences have limited the allowance of cats in properties because of the damages that were accrued. You can limit the number of animals, especially I go by a rule of thumb per square footage. So I say per 1,000 square footage is how many pets I allow. So if a house is 2,000 square footage or less, I allow 2. If it's 3,000, 3, etc. So I personally try to do 1,000 square feet per pet. And then when it comes to different breeds, it's really tricky because somebody can lie to you and they can say a lab. You really can't you really can't go into that because that's getting into the long-term rental territory. So my best recommendation is to friendly ask what type of animals and ask for a confirmation that they are up to date on their shots. I always ask for a vet report. And then I ask for like their size and weight, and I say for insurance purposes. And then I take a heftier pet deposit depending on what type of breed. If there's more of an aggressive animal, I'll add $250. And I have that in my leases just as an explanation. This is not legal advice. I highly recommend always going to, if you do go the lease route and you don't go on a platform like what I would recommend starting out, always use Airbnb or VRBO. But if you go the lease route and you go off platform, seek legal counsel just to confirm that you are saying things, in the right ways just to protect you. But different breeds, I will get a heftier pet deposit. And then if everything's great, which usually it is, because the people that take care of their animals, they don't care about the pet deposit. They'll pay it. The people that kind of balk at that are the ones you got to worry about. So that's really helps me also deter who's going to stay in the properties as well. And I think you had a couple other questions. I'm sorry. I'm trying to remember them.
No, I think you hit all of them. The other question or my follow-up question would be, how do you calculate the pet deposit?
Sure. I do $250 per month per animal. Or, you can say 10% of your monthly rent per animal. And so you can choose whether it's refundable or non-refundable. I have both a non-refundable cleaning fee that my cleaning team charges for all the animal hair or anything. And then I have a refundable pet fee as well, just to make sure no like molding trim corners are chewed up or anything, because I've had that, or floors scraped up. And like I said, 9 out of 10 times, the pet owners that take care of the properties, and I have no issues, they don't even bat an eye paying for it because they know they're going to get it back.
One other thing to think about is emotional support animals are not pets. And so if you are worrying, Rachel, for example, if you're worrying about getting that question that comes up, which you have to allow this animal, you can call it a pet or an animal rent. And again, it's not, you cannot say no because they are part of a protected class because they have papers and you have to proceed. So just be careful with saying pet versus animal, because then they'll try to, make it into something that it's really not an issue.
Right.
But,
that's a really great point, Rebecca, because you cannot say, you cannot ask to see papers. And I would always recommend just reviewing online. Airbnb actually has an entire section on what you can ask and what you cannot. So I recommend that if somebody does have an ESA animal, or just an ESA, that was animal twice. But anyway, if they do have an ESA, you want to make sure that you ask the right questions. So you cannot ask, why do they need an emotional support animal? I know, but some people ask that, and that is all these disability laws. You cannot go there. So if you have questions on what you can say or what you can do, you can literally, I think you can Google Airbnb ESA laws or landlord questions to ask, and they'll come up with a bunch of them.
Awesome. Great information. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Angela and Brandon, you guys are up.
Okay. Well, we may be newer than maybe some of the other people on the call, so sorry if you guys already know this. But what is the short-term property rental market like right now? Is it viable for us? Because this is new, and we're talking about risking the equity in our own home in order to purchase, and we just don't want to go in and get blindsided. And how do you successful?
Yeah, we're looking at mountains, not local to Charlotte too.
So the first thing I would tell you is remove the concept of short-term, midterm. Lump it in for a second, because it sounds like you guys also mentioned you may want to enjoy it occasionally, right?
Yes.
Okay. So my best recommendation is work with an agent that knows the area and is going to tell you what all those occupancy rates are going to be, because you don't want to be blindsided. I can tell you that since COVID, the boom for short-term rentals has been insane. And I think people realized being locked in for 2 years that they missed opportunities that they don't want to lose again. And some of my clients that are in the mountains and at the beach, their properties, and Rebecca can tell you also as a vacation rental host specifically, people are booked into like 2026 right now. Like it's that crazy. So I can tell you that as long as, this is my big 3, all right, for a short-term rental, as long as, especially when you're thinking mountains, this is going to be specific to mountains. Location, whether it's close to somewhere with amenities or the view is amazing, you're going to be booked. If the second one, if the furnishings, the design is complementary. Now, what I mean by that is I always try to keep my designs very unisex, because you don't know who's staying there. Just focus on, especially from a mountain perspective, because vacation rentals are designed in different ways. But as long as you focus on comfort, you have essentials. And then the next thing you're going to be also considering is in case of emergencies. As long as you have a recommendation, probably from your realtor, of emergency-based people that can be there for you and a strong cleaning team, you're going to be fine. Cleaning teams will make or break your short-term rental game. And that's, nobody wants to walk into an unclean house. That is the first way somebody's going to try to get money off of you. So you want to work and you want to trust your cleaning team wholeheartedly, especially so you're not going to be driving the 2 hours to walk through your own property every time. So you really want to trust somebody. If it's not a property manager, it's getting a handyman or a team that can be there for those emergencies.
Okay. Second question is what's sort of the gauge for the initial upfront cost, buying furniture, updating the house? I know it's dependent on the condition of the house and the size, but is there sort of a gauge to go on?
It's hard.
Okay.
And the reason I say that, I usually say plan about $1,000 per bedroom and then $1,000 per area. What I mean by that is it will blend in and it'll average out where maybe you spend only $600 a bedroom. But if you're starting out base, like $1,000 per bedroom is going to get you a mattress, end tables, nightstands, and it really depends also. Here's the second part. It depends on the level of house that you purchase.
Correct.
So if you purchase a luxury cabin that is going to rent for $16,000, I'm making this up, a week, you're not gonna want to spend $1,000 per bedroom. Overall, for like a midterm rental client, I say 2 to 3 times the average monthly rent is your first investment.
Okay.
And then you can work from there. So I would say for short term, it's going to be similar, but again, location, and you also want to look at what your monthly rent is going to be, because you don't want to put a $15,000 Pottery Barn bed in a house that's only getting you $3,000 a month. That would be silly, right? So you want to gauge at your market, and that will shift your design and your costs.
Okay.
And Ashley has on her website a couple of downloads that you can invest in, like really inexpensive downloads that give you a breakdown of what room by room
Awesome.
should look like.
Okay.
So make sure that you hop on her website. It's a great tool.
It's literally less than $10, but it's everything I've learned and pulled it into all the different, down to like spatulas. So it's a good tool.
All right. So we got a $3 book and a $10 download.
Yes. We have Moji. Moji, you're up next.
Yes, hi. I just was able to change my name so you can pronounce it better.
Thank
I
you.
have a quick question for Ashley. You mentioned something about jumping from midterm to short term, and in order to have the property occupied for a whole month. Is this allowed by all these platforms like Airbnb and Booking.com and all that?
Oh yeah, you control as the host. And again, if you're working with a property management company that handles short-term rentals, be very upfront that you want it as occupied as much as possible. If you're doing it yourself, the platforms allow you to change the availability of the days and how long your minimum stays are. I could go into a whole other session about the structuring of why I don't think you should ever do 1-day stays and you should do 2, and up, but you can structure it however you want. And they don't care. As long as they're getting their 3% fee, Airbnb doesn't care.
Again, how is about the midterm? Is it still 3%?
It depends on the platform. Yeah. So Airbnbs is 3% fee.
For both short and midterm, right?
Yeah, but it's the platform. So if you use Airbnb for also midterm, because they saw how big Furnished Finder and VRBO was becoming with midterm rental stays, they added where you can offer midterm rental stays as well. They'll ask you a little box on your listing of, do you allow properties to be rented longer than 28 days? You can have midterm rentals. They just take their little percentage out and they're happy. But that percentage is charged to the guest. So it doesn't come out of your bottom line.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
We have Jeanette next.
Hey there. I just had a couple questions for you. Thank you so much for this information. It's super helpful. The question I had was about, like, let's say somebody's staying in the mountains, and they're like, they're hunters, and so they're going to bring their hunting rifles, and like, have you had any experiences with that? And with that, yeah, is there like any kind of like, is there like a disclaimer or something that they're signing? Do you get some protections from Airbnb? Like, what are some like good, like, I'm just wondering how that all works.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Your house rules are going to be your like indoctrinated set of rules that Airbnb is going to back you up from. So as long as you don't, and they have timestamps with when you change these rules. So if somebody books and they say, we're a hunter and we have guns, and the day before you stay, not that you would do this, I'm just explaining, and that you change it to no guns allowed, they are going to look at that timestamp. So I always recommend looking at your home rules first off. The second thing is, I do not allow weapons into my property at any time. I don't care if they're registered, especially if they're not. There is an actual box that says no illegal firearms on Airbnb, but I write that again into my house rules that we do not allow illegal firearms and drugs into the property. The second thing is, legal firearms must be locked in your car.
got it. Yeah, that's good. That's
Not my problem. Too much liability. A gun goes off. Oh my God. Nope. Don't even want to deal with it.
Absolutely. And so with that, like when you're getting your insurance, right, for your rental, I mean, I'm guessing they'll ask you those questions, and that's probably part of the reason why you wouldn't allow it, because then that would increase the amount significantly, I'm guessing. Or they wouldn't.
To be honest with you, they don't ask that.
Oh, they
They
don't.
don't. No. I think just from a liability perspective, because I've had, again, those of you want to see some bad guest stories, go to my TikTok. It's at Built with Class. I tell a lot of fun stories. Over 8 years of co-hosting and managing, there's some doozies. It's just, you learn as you go. My best recommendation is to look into the location that your property is on Airbnb. Pull up other listings. You can see their house rules.
Yeah.
Look at what the similar ones are and take that language, because they've been doing it as well. It was one person that during COVID actually had a clause that I use on all my rentals now. And I learned from them of, we recommend you purchasing travel insurance. We are not going to give you a full stay refund if you unfortunately get COVID. because that was one of the bigger ones, so
Yeah.
different things like that you will absolutely learn. But yes, as far as guns or anything of liability, it's the same as hotels. Hotels don't allow guns either. Hotels say, lock your stuff in the safe. We're not liable otherwise. And so I say, lock your stuff in your car. We're not liable.
Very good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And then we have Ashley.
Hey there, Ashley.
Hi.
Thank you for all of this. Has been just a font of information. It's been great.
Oh, good.
So I don't know if you've said this or not, or you kind of like talked around it a little bit.
Yeah.
So I actually have some investor clients that are wanting to do Airbnbs, and I'm trying to help them with them. And we had talked about her possibly doing exclusively the like the traveling nurses or the corporate placement. So I know, Airbnb, VRBO probably has those, but are there more specific where she could put her property on that would only be looking for that?
Yeah, Furnished Finder is an excellent resource.
Furnished
Now,
Finder.
the one thing I would caveat, just to keep in mind, and that's for any agents that are on this call, when we're talking about medical professionals, Mecklenburg as a whole and a lot of different counties have reduced their traveling nurse rate because COVID is not as significant anymore. And so before, I remember I had traveling nurses that they were getting lodging fees during COVID of $3,600 a month, plus their rent, plus a food cap.
Yeah.
I think it's now shifted to $1,200. So that significantly changes their rental box. So if they do want to specifically focus on travel medical professionals or like business housing, keep that in mind. What I would recommend is if they want to open it to that, try to focus on 3 bedrooms plus, because then you also open it to families. So that keeps you booked with different opportunities for a midterm space.
Oh, I didn't even, okay. Yeah. In my head, I was thinking like single or maybe like nurse friends that are going to be lodging together for 2 months while they're here or something. Okay. Yeah. I didn't even think about that. Okay, great. Yeah. Boom.
Yeah. I capitalized on my 2 ones. I loved my little 2-bedroom, 1 baths for traveling nurses. And then when the COVID, vaccine came out and things started to shift, it was harder for me to rent my 2 bedrooms, 1 baths because people weren't ready to travel as much and families couldn't join. So that's when I started to shift to more 3 bedrooms.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I think that is all of the questions. Does anyone else have another question? Okay, so my final question to you, Ashley, is what do you wish you knew then that you now know that we absolutely have to make sure that we nail?
Don't take it personal. No matter what you do, it is a customer service business, but you will always get, no matter if you're in long-term rentals, short-term rentals, or midterm rentals, you will always get that one client that you just can't win with. Don't take it personal. Deliver a good product, deliver a good house. Don't be a slumlord. And, if the HVAC's not working, don't let somebody stifle in 104-degree heat. We don't want that. Just do the best you can. And sometimes you're just not going to win. And that's acceptable. Customer service is what it is.
I love that. And reviews are super important.
They are. Yeah. But sometimes you still, you get that one person. I got a 3-star review the other day out of 5, and Airbnb counts a 3-star as this house should not even be like listed. All right. They're very specific on their ratings. The 3-star was because there weren't enough towels. She didn't message me or anything. So, nothing I could do about that. That stunk. It brought down my average. It drove me crazy. But at the end of the day, you just got to go to bed and start again. That's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. If you could
Sure.
slide to the last slide again so that
Yeah.
everyone can see your contact information. So
Absolutely.
again, tomorrow we, as a grid networking group, always make sure that we send out a follow-up message to everybody who attended. So you'll get a recap of what we shared today. You'll also receive Ashley's slides, links to her books and her website so that you can download her incredibly valuable information for very inexpensive. And next month, we are getting back together in person, second Wednesday of the month at 5:30. And be on the lookout for your emails. And again, if you need anything as far as investing goes, feel free to reach out, and definitely reach out to Ashley if she can help with consulting it in any way.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Everyone. Oh, I thought Jeanette was about to ask another question. I hope. Oh,
No worries.
do you have a
Sorry.
question?
I was just trying to clap. Sorry about that.
Okay. Well, everyone, enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Bye.